It's report card time, and President Biden is failing when it comes to immigration. New polling data shows that voters give the president's handling of the southern border an F. A new Harvard Caps Harris poll reveals that 44% of respondents say the surge of migrant crossings is the Biden administration's biggest failure. A majority of Republicans, 57%, nearly 30% of Democrats, and nearly half of independents expressed that sentiment.
Perhaps hoping to stem the bleeding in his polling numbers, Biden plans to head to the border Thursday to assess the situation and get some good optics. Biden will have company, as former president and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump's also scheduled to visit at the same time. Now, per The Hill, Biden continues to press Congress to act on immigration, but is mulling using executive authority to do something about the massive wave of illegal immigrants crossing the border.
Trump's team lambasted Biden's visit. Trump spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt released a statement saying, quote, Biden's last-minute insincere attempt to chase President Trump to the border won't cut it. Americans note Biden is single-handedly responsible for the worst immigration crisis in history. Border security has become such a hot topic as of late, due in part to a steady flow of drugs smuggled into the U.S. through Mexico, most notably fentanyl, half of which, it's worth noting, comes from China. California Governor Gavin Newsom released a statement Tuesday calling fentanyl a poison and revealing that a record number of seizures from the drug occurred in 2023, amounting to 62,224 pounds of fentanyl, which was seized in the state. Newsom says that could kill the global population twice over.
Here to discuss this topic further is author of the Mostly Peaceful Substack, Julio Rosas. Welcome back to Rising, Julio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think last we talked to you was before, or maybe during the discussion of the border deal, which is now very much dead. Republicans hearing from, I think, some of the people in their districts that they didn't want this bill. At the same time, polls showing us that people trust Trump more than Biden on the border. What do you make of the recent narrative around immigration and what Biden is doing about it?
Well, I just think it's funny because when the border deal talks were still in progress, Biden and his administration was saying that they needed this bill in order to take action at the border, but that wasn't true. They know it wasn't true, and we know this because, as you mentioned, the administration is finally taking a look at the executive action and the executive power, which is what I was referring to in the previous interview that I had with you guys. So it's a bait and switch. The American people know it. That's why the polling is showing that this is his worst issue that he has worked on because he made it an issue. And so, yeah, he's going down to the border today, but that's not going to do anything. It's not going to change his mind. And it's not coincidental that he decided to go to the least impacted part of the border down in Brownsville.
Let's say that Biden doesn't really want to do anything on the border and he won't use his executive authority to do so. There is this bipartisan border bill, which would have enormously funded to the tunes of billions of dollars, ICE, border security, administrative law judges to help process claims more quickly. ICE is currently facing, according to NBC News, a $500 million budget shortfall unless Congress takes action. Why not simply vote through that legislation? And if and when Trump becomes president or a Republican becomes president next year, they can continue to make additional reforms. Why not have something at least be done in the interim with the allowance of Republicans having voted for it in Congress?
Well, I mean, the House Republicans already passed H.R. 2, which included many of the actual good provisions that the Senate border deal had. So that's number one. Number two, it also just gives the Biden administration a pass on their purposeful failure to actually secure the border. That's one of the things that that was one of the things that made the border deal bad because, again, it was abdicating, or it appeared that, Biden didn't have it within his already power because this whole started on day one. He undid executive orders that the Trump administration did to work to secure the border. So if he didn't do that, I mean, all he had to do was just leave that alone, and we wouldn't have seen what we have seen and what I've seen over the past couple of years. Because when you have that posture coming from the Oval Office, people are going to respond to incentives. Yes, the world is, a large part of the world is in a terrible place, and people want to come to the United States just by virtue of us being a great country. But when there's that pull factor coming in from the United States government itself, where not only can you get in easily, but also have a much easier time staying, even if you don't actually qualify for asylum, a lot of people are going to take advantage of that. And we've seen not just desperate people, but we've seen hardened criminals from places like Venezuela wreak havoc on cities within the country.
If I could just follow up on one thing you said there. You said it's not a good idea to pass the legislation which would fund the border, which currently is facing a deficit, as I mentioned, because it would give Biden a pass. Is that kind of an acknowledgement that this is a political consideration that's being put ahead of addressing what has been described, I don't think wrongly, as a crisis at the border?
No, not at all, because also just the fact that it was paired with foreign aid, number one, that had spent more money on other countries than our own, that was also problematic, but also would handicap future administrations. Like you mentioned that, well, why not just work on it afterwards? Because anything dealing with immigration, it would have had to deal with, like in terms of lawsuits, it would have to go only through the DC Circuit Court. It also funded NGOs that are helping facilitate this problem. And so as I said before, it spent more money that we don't have and gives more power that the U.S. government doesn't need. It already has all that. So it's not a political stunt. It's just saying that, look, we already know what works. It was working before, so you just have to do that instead of passing another wasteful spending bill that, yes, I mean, yeah, there were some good things in it, but it was paired with a lot of horrible things as well.
Just to clarify, though, and I'm sorry, this won't be a question, but the border bill was lumped with the foreign aid bills because that's what Republicans asked for as they were being persuaded to support those foreign aid bills last fall. So they explicitly said, give us an immigration bill, and then we'll consider your foreign aid bill. And the Democrats basically called their bluff, just to be clear on the posture of that.
Here's my question for you, Julio. Let's say that Donald Trump is reelected, takes office with a mandate to fix what's going wrong at the border. What do you think he should do to address all of these issues that polls show wildly that people are very upset about?
Well, just really quick to the previous point, I understand that that's what some, quote unquote, members of Republicans in Congress asked for in terms of the bill. But when you actually ask regular Republican voters, they never wanted that kind of stipulation. So, but in terms of, yes, let's say Trump gets back into office. I mean, really, it's just a matter of going back to what he was pursuing before. I mean, it's just start building a border wall. We need the third country agreements that we had that Biden administration also undid. It goes beyond just remain in Mexico, although obviously that's a part of that. Just those three things alone will start making an impact, because the posture and the incentives that are coming from the U.S. federal government are no longer there. And then, of course, now we also have, maybe some of the sanctuary cities are seeing the disastrous effects, and maybe they're willing to overturn their local ordinances to actually work with ICE, because we've seen just with recent cases, with the University of Georgia this past week, there are consequences to having lax immigration laws, or an unwillingness at a local level to not work with the federal government on this important issue.
Julio Rosas, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.